Well, welcome back to the Redeem Her Time podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about systems and automations in order to be able to work less and earn more. Who doesn't want that? And I have my friend Gillian Perkins with us today, who you guys is not just here saying this is what you can do, like she's actually living it and able to work a very successful business in just 20 hours a week. So that is amazing. Gillian, we're so excited for you to be here today. I want to start off by hearing a little bit about like what all are you juggling in this season of life right now? What does the life hold for you?
For sure. Well, it's definitely a season of juggle, I would say. So I run an online business where I have a YouTube channel, a podcast, all the things. And I teach people how to start online businesses, but also people who already have online businesses, how to scale up their businesses without scaling up their workload.
Mm.
And we do that through, like you said, systems and automation. I love to build them some really strategic sales funnels. They don't have to be like big, fancy, complicated funnels, but how can we get like the top like rates in the funnel, the top conversion rates, so that they can be converting as much of the traffic, the visibility that they're getting into sales for them so that they don't have to have massive amounts of visibility and they can really make the most with what they've got. So I've got that. Like you said, I normally run in about 20 hours a week. Rarely over that. In the last 6 months, though, it's looked a little different. I was on maternity leave for 3 months. So I wasn't working at all. And then since I've been back, I've been working maybe like 12, 15 hours a week. So even a lot less than
Oh,
normal.
is this going to be the
Um,
new norm or is this just like a
I don't
new?
really know. I'm kind of cruising with it for now. It's working so far. I hired a couple new people. Well, really one main person, but then also like increased a couple people's hours to make that maternity leave possible. And so now there's not as much for me to do. And so we're just kind of feeling it out right now. Do I want to keep doing so little in my business? Because there are pros and cons to that,
Sure, sure.
being less involved. It's nice to have more time for my family for sure. Like that's wonderful. But then there's also I'm less plugged in with my business. And
Yes.
so sometimes that can make it a little hard to like kind of keep your finger on the pulse, to feel kind of emotionally invested in the team and in the customers and my audience and all of that. So maybe we can talk more about that later. But so I've got the business and then I have 6 kids who I homeschool. So that's the other big thing that I'm juggling. And we're a pretty like active family. We do a lot of activities and that sort of thing, which with that, there's also that pro and con, right? Like it's great to
Right.
do all the activities, but I don't like it when I feel too busy. So, always just trying to figure out how to navigate that and how to stay balanced with all of that.
Yeah, I love it. 6 kids, six-figure business. And yeah, and what I want to say, a lot of my audience who listens are solopreneurs. So I want you
Mhm.
guys listening because what Gillian just shared is that it is possible to build out systems and automations in team such that you don't have to be the only person that's like clicking every button. That's the person that's
Mhm.
making everything happen. And, like she shared, there may be seasons when you need or want to step away from your business. And so what we're talking about today is going to help with that. And there may be seasons that you just want to have some more time to do other things or to invest in the
Mhm.
things only you can do. So that will be, I just want you guys always listening about how can I, yeah, move into a place where I am able to do things like that. So I would love, Gillian, for you just to share a little bit of your journey. I mean, I'm sure you didn't just like, boom, I'm doing a business and tomorrow it was 6 figures and, like we know it doesn't happen overnight. So
No, it doesn't.
give us
And
a little
you
bit on
were
the.
talking about how so many people in your audience are solopreneurs. And of course, that's where I started too. That's where almost all of us start, unless we have some like crazy venture capital thing happening. But that's like none of us, right?
Exactly.
So like let's be
Yeah.
real. So yeah, so when I got started, I started my first business when I was a teenager, and it was an accident. I was a music student, and I started having people reach out to me about teaching their kids music lessons. And I said, I have no idea how to do that. Never done that before. No. And they said, please try. So after a lot of asking, I finally decided to try it, and it went really well. And it ended up growing into my full-time job and basically my career for 11 years. Grew into Northwest School of Music, which was like one of the biggest music academies here in Oregon, here in the Northwest, really. And it was a fun time, and I learned so much about business through building that business. But it also was not what I ever was planning on doing long term. It was just something I kind of got roped into. So throughout building that business, almost every year, I started some little side hustle in all sorts of different industries. Initially, they were all like local sorts of businesses, not online businesses, and just dabbled with so many different things. And every time I started a new business, there's this thing you have to do. You have to find customers, right? So I
Right.
tried all the different marketing strategies. I put up billboards around town, I put up signs, I put ads on the radio, I ran Google ads, I ran Facebook ads, all the things, tested them all out. And at the end of that period of time, probably like 9, 10 years in, I realized that I thought I was trying to figure out what career I wanted, and that's why I was starting all those businesses. And that was true to some extent, but also it was because I love business. I love entrepreneurship, and I was finding the marketing side of things really fun. So I decided to start talking about that and creating content about that. Start writing articles about some of the different businesses I tried, some of the different marketing strategies that I'd tried, and what I'd learned from them, and that sort of thing. And this led to me getting some digital marketing clients, people who asked me, "Can you run my Facebook ads for me?" And I was very game for trying different things, right? So I was like, "Sure, we can try this. See if this is profitable." So that led to me kind of segueing into starting a digital marketing agency. Did that for just like 6 months to a year before I realized I actually really did not like doing like service-based work for clients. I like having a lot of flexibility with my work schedule. And I also, even though I didn't want to teach music long term, I did actually really like teaching. And I think that that is really a gift that I have, something that comes naturally to me, something that I enjoy doing. So I ended up switching to teaching people how to do the marketing for themselves. Also, I wanted them to kind of get their hands dirty with it and
Sure.
to understand, because I was running into challenges with them as clients where it was like, maybe your sales copy isn't as strong as it needs to be, or your landing page needs to be redesigned, that sort of thing. And they didn't really understand why, because they weren't the person who was running the ads and trying to get the conversions. So I wanted them to do it for themselves so they could understand like what the challenges were and what they needed to fix and kind of fix those root issues. Ended up selling the music school and transitioned full time into this education business that I was starting online. And of course, I was doing it all myself at that point because brand new business, not making much money. And something that I think is interesting is that while my business today is far more successful than that business, what was this, like 7, 8 years ago? It make that business made almost no money. My business today makes $500,000 a year. Okay. It's a huge difference. But that business was doing almost as much as my business does today. Only at that point, I was doing all of it myself. And today I do a fraction of it myself. Right. But I was pushing out a new YouTube video or two every week. I wasn't doing a podcast, but I was doing a blog every week. I was running ads for my business. I was creating products and programs and running those products and programs, right? I was doing all the email. So all the things were happening, right? I was also trying to be on multiple social media platforms. And it's amazing how much we can fit into our schedule, right? It's this like Parkinson's law, right? Like work expands to fill the time available for it.
Right.
I had 20, 30 hours a week, and I spent that time doing everything I needed to do for my business. And it was amazing how much I got done. Now, as the business did start to grow, though, I started to see my work hours creep up, and it got a little bit to be too much for me, considering the fact that I had 2 young kids. So it wasn't anything crazy, but it was exceeding 30 hours a week. And that was too much for me. And so I started by hiring a video editor because editing videos is a very time consuming thing to do. And it's also one of the easiest things to outsource, I would say. So it was just a very easy thing to start with. I tried hiring a couple virtual assistants. It didn't work out very well. I think it was because my business wasn't very well organized at the time. I didn't know how to manage a business, at least not an online business with all these virtual assets, digital assets, right? Because I'd been used to running a local business where we had like books on the shelf, files on the shelf, right? Clients coming in the door. So organizing that was a very different beast. I ended up hiring an online business manager, an OBM. She helped me get my business really organized. And then we were able to start hiring some different virtual assistants to do customer service and other people to manage, like our digital marketing in different ways and manage programs and that sort of thing. So today I have a team of about half a dozen people, right? 6, 7 people. And I've had a team that size for the last probably 5 years or so, maybe since 2019. So maybe 6 years.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I would love to maybe if we can touch on if wherever it fits, but like when do you feel like people get to that point where it's that tipping point of like, okay, I can't be the one doing all of this, you know. I think sometimes people are looking for like once I hit a certain income level,
Mm.
and we're waiting for, you know, they can be waiting for that piece of it versus no, you actually need to do it before you hit the income level because that's what's going to help you hit the income level. So
Hmm.
yeah, maybe what would you say to that, to someone who's listening and going, wow, I would love to have six people, let alone one person, but I just can't afford it right now. Like, what would you say
Yeah.
to her?
Yeah. Well, first of all, obviously, it comes one person at a time. So you can dream of the team, but you really have to start with where you're at right now, of course,
Mm.
and think, what one thing would be really helpful to have someone else do. When I first started trying to hire people for my online business, I had read some different books about outsourcing. So there's one book called Virtual Freedom. And then, of course, The 4 Hour Work Week. Tim Ferriss talks about outsourcing as well. And they talk about how you can outsource maybe off seas, or is that the right word? Overseas, that's the right word, overseas, and get some like labor for really cheap rates and that sort of thing, so that you can focus on the important work in your business that only you can do, they said. And I thought,
Right.
oh, that sounds good, because I have too much to do and I clearly need help because I'm not making any money. So I tried hiring some people, and what I found was that when you try delegating, when you try even like things like automating, and you scale up the work you're doing when you're not yet getting the results that you want, you get more of the same thing.
Mm.
So more of, in my case, zero results. I really had to wait until I got to the point where things were working before I could hand them off. It seems like, for me at least, and some people might be better at this than me, but for me, I have to get something work. Like even today in my business, I really have to get a new like system or strategy working for me, or with me very closely involved in it before I can successfully hand it off to someone else.
Yeah,
Um,
no, that makes
the
sense.
yeah, the only exception being like sometimes bringing in someone who is like an expert, a specialist in some specific thing, like maybe like SEO for my website or something like that, right? And they come in and they are going to do everything on their own. But other than that, if you're looking for somebody who isn't an expert in that way, then yeah, you normally have to figure out how to get it working first. So with my YouTube channel, I waited until I'd been posting videos for a while. I had figured out what I wanted the style of the videos to be like.
Mm.
And YouTube itself was actually, it was growing and it was profitable at that point. So I was able to hire someone, and it wasn't exactly an expense. It was a lot more like an investment that I was getting a positive
Mm.
ROI on.
Right. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and then when I brought that project manager or online business manager in, it was after I had launched a membership site and the launch had gone really well. So now I had some recurring revenue in the business. When we launched the membership site, 300 people signed up right out of the gate. And that was $10,000 a month in recurring revenue. And that was like my business went from it was earning zero to we started like doing some workshops and some mini courses and stuff that was bringing in a few $1,000s a month up to suddenly it was $10,000 a month was our baseline, which was amazing, such a blessing. But that was the point at which I was able to hire someone and there was some like real work for them to do, and it was profitable to have them there because now there was something that I could be working on improving to make even more money.
Mm.
So rather than waiting necessarily for a certain income level, I would just say that with anything in your business, I would recommend generally waiting to hire someone to help you with it until you are already being successful with that aspect of the business.
Yeah, that makes sense. You don't want to create more of the results you already have if you're not getting
Exactly.
results.
Yeah.
And then you're
With
going to
the
be good.
I was just going to say with the caveat that sometimes, you hire someone because you're struggling with that area of the business and you're hiring more like a consultant or a coach or something to help you figure out what you need to change about your strategy or to find the right strategy. But you just need to know, I think, when you're making the hire, which of those two reasons are you making that
Mm.
hire for? If you are just, say, overwhelmed with some aspect of the business, so you hire an assistant to help you with it, don't expect to get better results than you're getting already. You might
Sure.
get your time back, but the results probably aren't going to improve.
Makes a lot of sense. I love it. I love it. Okay, so we're thinking ahead about like, okay, I would love to be able to bring on somebody, which means when you're in the earlier stages of business and you don't have a team, here's where I'm hearing the systems and automations really need to come
Hmm.
in. We need to start building those things out because then you'll have something to hand off. So let's kind of dive into this a little bit because truth be told, like there is a lot to do or a lot we could do in business. And I often call it being a busyness owner, where we are doing a lot of things but not seeing results. And so, like, this is something that so many, I know my audience struggles with is just, especially when it's just me, I've got so much to do and I only have so much time and I want time for these other things. And it just feels like if I want this thing to go, I just have to keep feeding the machine, more of my time and things
Hmm.
like that. So, you teach people how to work less and earn more. So like let's kind of get practical around like how do systems and automation, help us to do that very thing and not feel like we're always on the hamster wheel, like you said, pouring more and more time in and may or maybe not seeing, more results from that time.
Hmm. Well, I'll start by just saying, like, I'd give the same caveat with the systems and automations that I would give with hiring, where most of the time it's not going to help you get bigger results. It's going
Mhm.
to save you the time, right?
Sure.
But if you aren't getting the results you want with kind of the manual process, you're probably not going to get the results you want if you automate things. In fact, most of the time we see the results reduce a little bit, except that sometimes it enables us to do more. Right. But if we keep like doing the same amount with an automated system versus a manual system, generally the automated system like performs a little worse. So just keep that in mind. Um, so as far as those automations, well, let me actually first give an example of what I'm talking about. So, like, let's say you want to have a sales system that sells your product for you. You don't want to have to maybe be manually chasing leads, following up with them, getting on sales calls. You think it'd be great if I had an automated sales funnel. And it really is amazing. I love this system, but it does tend to perform like convert a little worse than if you were, manually interacting with people one-on-one, doing sales calls one-on-one, that sort of thing. And so before we build the automated system, we always want to make sure that we live launch a product and that we make sure that there is demand for it and that we figure out the messaging that converts really well for it. And that then we can take those different marketing assets that we created that we know work, that we know convert, and we can automate them. So does that make sense, Lissa? Do you have any questions about that?
Yeah, no, I think so. Here's what I'm hearing. So tell me if this is what you're saying. I'll kind of speak for my audience, right? So say for
Mhm.
example, you're doing a workshop to lead to a program that you have. You can record that workshop,
Mhm.
and then now what you're saying is now we have this asset that we
Yeah.
can kind of create an evergreen system around that people can keep consuming that, and it still keeps driving to that same product and brings them in there without necessarily having to redo the workshop. Is that a
Yeah, for
correct?
sure. That's a great example. And I'm glad you said that because I just kind of threw that term like, marketing assets or something out there and I didn't really explain what I meant. But yeah, this could be like emails that you send out to sell the product that now you set up an automation in your email marketing system. So every time a new subscriber joins your email list, they get a welcome sequence and then they get that email sequence that, you had a successful launch with. Or like you said, Lissa, it could be a webinar or a workshop or something like that you did live and it converted well. So now you set it up so people can watch it on demand. It can be as simple as like a sales page that you used for a live launch and it converted well. So now you make it evergreen. Maybe you put an automated timer on it so that when people go to it, the deal is only available to them for a certain amount of time, 3 days or 24 hours or something like that. There's so many different ways to do this, but that's the basic concept there.
Okay, so that's a great idea. Can you just kind of maybe give us some high level, you don't have to go into all the details, but like what are some other systems that we could automate once you said, we've already done it manually. So
Hmm.
besides like those couple of ideas with a sales system, what might be some other things that we can be thinking about that
Yeah, for
we could
sure.
start building manually so that we can start figuring out how to automate?
Yeah, yeah. I will say that that almost anything in your business that you do repeatedly, you can automate at least part of the process too, but you might not want to automate it 100%. Because, we don't want our businesses to just be robots that run without
Right.
us because the That you're going to lose a lot of the results at that point and also lose a lot of the fun. You'll be really disconnected from your business. And so then when it's not performing as well as you would like, it'll be hard for you to get in there and really diagnose and have the heart, have the energy to want to fix it. So another example would be like your customer service. Now,
Okay.
would we want to set up a chat bot where every time someone emailed you, AI answered them for you? I don't think so. I don't think that's really where we want to go. I think that we were created to help each other and to have relationships with other humans. And that while our business, maybe the main reason we have it is to make money, at least a big side reason we have it is to be helping people and to be interacting with people and to be having those relationships. And I don't think that the AI or whatever it is going to be able to help the people as well as you can because they are not going to, I said they, I don't,
Right.
it will not have, the empathy, the understanding that you as a human can have. It's not going to be able to give it as experienced of advice as you could give them. And it certainly can't have the relationship that you could have that will lead to that person, maybe wanting to work with you more in the future, or trusting you, or you being able to help them in a deeper way. So I don't really want to go that route.
Sure.
But what can be really helpful is we manually answer people and then we notice that we are getting certain questions over and over again, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so that's now something that we are doing repeatedly. And instead of writing the same answer from scratch over and over again, we save the replies. And a lot of email systems have some way that you can do this. For example, we have our business email management out of what's called Help Scout. So it's a software that is like a inbox management system, basically. And so people can write into contact@gillianperkins.com. So you could do the same thing with like Google Workspaces, but Help Scout is designed to have like a team working out of it, which is why we use that. Anyway, but they've got these things called saved replies. And so
Mhm.
you can do like a type as you're answering the email, type slash, and then you can enter in a keyword that is, is in the title or in the body of that reply that you're looking for. And so you can pull up, an answer that you've given somebody in the past, and then you can edit it for this person's specific situation. And it really can save quite a bit of time, especially with, maybe if somebody's writing in and asking you for advice, maybe you're going to write it from scratch. Although, again, maybe somebody's asked you a very similar question in the past. But what if they're writing you and they're asking if they could come on your podcast, right? You probably
Mhm.
have like a default, like one or two default answers that you give. There's no reason that you need to like use all your brain energy to figure out what words to use all over again, or to just take the time to do that, right? So those saved replies, that's a great like partial automation, a template that I think is a win for everybody involved because you can get more done in less time, right?
Yeah.
And if you do have a team, it's so helpful to have that because now your team can work less and earn more, so you can afford to pay them a little bit more per hour because they can be so more productive per hour.
Exactly. And I love this. I love that you said anything that is reoccurring.
Hmm.
I teach that we should have a system around it, right? Even if it's just you, yourself, and you for a while, every time you go in and do that task, for you to have a step-by-step exactly what to do is going to save
Hmm.
time. And then
Yeah,
get
like an
thinking about,
SOP. Yeah.
yeah, how can I automate this or how could I delegate this? And then, you can start moving in that direction. That's such a beautiful thing, right? And so,
Yeah. Let me tell you about one of my favorite ways to have SOPs. As someone who's not
okay.
very SOP inclined, and what I mean by that is like I love to cook, but I can't really follow a recipe to save my life because I love looking at recipes, and I think that anybody, especially if you can't cook, recipes can be brilliant for kind of, teaching you how. But when you know how to cook really well, a recipe feels like, why would I stop and like follow the instructions when I already know how to do this, right?
Sure.
And so I start cooking something and I'm looking at the ingredients. I'm like, oh, I don't have that thing, but I've got this other thing. And oh, I think it would be a little better if I swapped this ingredient out. And then I don't even bother reading the instructions. And normally it goes well. The other day I was, sorry, I'm getting way too much into talking about my cooking thing, but the other day I was following a recipe and I made these muffins, and then I realized you were supposed to blend the oats into flour. So that one didn't work
You're a
out
little
quite as it
chunky.
still tasted good. Yeah, they were kind of oatmeal-y, but
Yeah.
anyhow, I'm the same way with SOPs. So
Hmm.
I sometimes like struggle to even bring myself to bother to go look up the SOP, even if it's only 2 clicks away, because it's like, well, I already know how to do this thing, and that feels like extra work. But they can be so helpful. But here's how I find they are always helpful to me. when they're inside the task.
Hmm.
So we use Asana as our project management system, but you can do this with you should have a project management system of some sort of fancier to-do list that helps you, that allows you to put more details into each item, where you can schedule them, where you can make them recur. Let's talk about that more in a couple minutes. But when I click on that task and the task says, I don't know, reach out to three potential podcast guests. Okay. I'll just start doing it. But if there are instructions in that task, if there are links to resources I might need, like links to a list of potential guests, for example, right? That saves me time. I don't have to go digging through Google Drive looking for that file that I needed. I don't have to try to remember things from scratch. I don't miss steps, right? It saves me mistakes. So if you can put that SOP, like if the idea of creating a library of SOPs sounds tiresome to you, like it sounds to me and like a lot of work that you don't have time for, then just start by whatever resources you need to do a task, put them in the task so that the next time you're doing that same task, it's right there at your fingertips and you don't have to go find it again.
Yes, I'm a firm believer. Like if you're going to need the link, put it with the whatever it is that's reminding you to do this task, and then you don't have to go search through Google Drives or emails or things like that to find that. So
Yeah,
I
I
love
think it's a
that.
big time saver. And it also, I think, if you struggle with procrastination at all, I
Hmm.
think that that's a big help because a lot of the time, the reason we struggle with procrastination is because we are a little bit overwhelmed by where do we even start with this or by going and finding the pieces we need. So when you make it easy for yourself, then you're more likely to get it done and get it done on time.
I love it. You mentioned wanting to come back to reoccurring tasks in some way.
Yeah,
So
if you don't have a project management system, you're missing out on the amazingness of recurring tasks. If
yeah,
you do, then you're probably it probably doesn't seem that amazing to you. It's like, well, of course I have recurring tasks. Doesn't
right.
everybody? But I don't think everybody does because I know that when I started my business, I didn't. I was working off of a to-do list, It was a
Mhm.
very detailed to-do list. It was a very
Sure.
organized to-do list, but it was a to-do list that lived on my phone or in a Google Doc or something like that. And there was no such thing as recurring tasks. But that meant that I couldn't have those resources saved, popping up again. And also, it was hard to be accountable or to be organized enough about doing things, on the schedule that they needed to get done on. So whether you're working by yourself or you have a small team, either way, those recurring tasks are very helpful. And I would say that it's even more important if you do have a small team because now the help that is going to be multiplied across everyone on
Mhm.
your team. And then speaking about like tools and team and how those things can work together and kind of exponentially help or hinder each other, kind of. If you have a team and you're working out of email, please change your ways. Email is not a very organized way to communicate with a team. There are better options like Slack, for example. You can actually use Slack for free. We prefer the free Slack. Don't tell Slack, but we
Right.
prefer the free version of Slack. But using something like that, it enables you to keep your conversations organized and threaded and without all of the kind of like buffer space and extra stuff that's in an email. In an email,
Mhm.
you've got like the header, you've got the signature, and then conversations get collapsed in unhelpful ways. So please use some sort of tool that is designed for teams to communicate because it will save you a lot of time and it will mean a lot less messages get lost. So it'll keep you a lot more organized, which will save you time also.
I love it. I love it. I'm all about how can we, yeah, do more with the time that we have and not have to add more time in order to do more. So all of these things are so helpful. And just circling back to the recurring tasks, when I teach CEOs to build what I call a CEO dashboard, which is a
Hmm.
one tab like landing page where everything that they do stems from that, we talk about the difference between a reoccurring task and what I call a one and done. That's a
Hmm.
true to do. It's like once I do this, I'm checking it off and I literally am not coming back to this ever again. And I think like sometimes we think, oh, this is a one-time thing, but really if it's a one-time thing once a quarter or once a year,
Hmm.
it truly, needs some kind of a recurring system around it. So I love that. So obviously this is going to help save us time, in our business. It's going to help make our teams more effective. So that's going to save us time and money there as well. Any other things you want to speak to around the impact that this has on our business? And then I'd love to go like, okay, and what does this do for the rest of our life, right? So that if we're not in
Hmm.
front of our screen, 30, 40, I know some business owners are spending, 50, 60. It's like more than a full-time job
Yeah.
in business for a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
business owners.
Well, I'll just throw one more thing out there that there's something that's in between what I would call like a one and done versus a recurring. And technically this is recurring, but not something that you say, okay, this is going to repeat every week or this is going to repeat,
Mm.
every month or something like that. But it recurs intermittently and it's based on some other triggering action. So, for
Yes.
example, you're booking a podcast guest. I used that example earlier. Well, every time you book a guest, this isn't necessarily going to be every week or every month, but
Mhm.
when somebody says, I want to be on your podcast and you say yes, or you reach out to someone and they say yes, well, then there's a whole bunch of tasks that have to happen to get that scheduled and to get their information and to actually meet up with them and then to publish it afterwards, right? To edit it and
Yes.
publish it. Well, all of those, we can put those into a template task
Mhm.
with subtasks. And this is like, I think one of the biggest things you're missing out on if you are still using a to-do list. And I love my to-do lists, but to run a business, I think that we need something more robust. So in Asana or ClickUp or whatever you have, you can create a task with subtasks and then you can turn that into a template. Okay. So the task might be like new podcast episode, subtasks, reach out to potential guests, get them on the calendar, get their information, follow up with them, record interview, record intro. We've got all these tasks we need to do to make it happen. We don't need to make sure we remember all of them every time. We need to have them already set up as a template. And, I think that when people think of automation, sometimes they expect this to be something very like, I don't know, fancy, very technical,
Mm.
something kind of like a if this then that, or make or N8N or something like that, where we have AI working behind the scenes so that when we click a button, a gazillion things happen for us automatically. Most of the automations that I like the best are these like partial automations where it's a template where we are doing our manual work,
Mhm.
we are involved, we are enjoying it, but it's saving us so much time, right?
Yeah.
It's helping us not have to do things from scratch. And then there's some automations that we have run behind the scenes that are, that sort of thing that are fully automated where like a subscriber gets on my email list. I don't do anything manual. They get on my email list, they automatically get a certain tag based on what they like what opt-in offer they signed up for. They automatically get bumped onto the welcome email sequence. They go through that. If they click this button, then they go into this funnel that promotes this product to them. If they click this other button, then they go into this other sequence, right? So their journey, that customer journey, is fully automated until they send us an email. And if they send us an email, then that's where I want to step in and I
Yeah.
want somebody to like with, that human touch to really hear what they have to say and then decide should we send them this automated email or something totally custom.
I love it. I love it. And now here's what I'm hearing. Because I know that so many business owners, like even when you close the laptop and you close the
Mhm.
door to your office, you still can really still be working in your head all the time, right? And so then you're with your family, but you're not really with your family. I like to say, back in the day, I was in the room, but not really in the room. So, like,
Mhm.
what impact have you seen, having automations and systems have around your life outside of your business, and how does it help you to more fully show up present to what God's called you to in that season?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I really relate to that. And one of the ways that that would show up for me was that I would try to work and be a mom at the same time. I
Yeah.
thought, I don't want to like go away, to hide in my office for all these hours. I would rather be with my family. So I'll just sit in the living room and work. But I don't know about you, but I was about like 50% as productive. I could get about half as much done in the same amount of time doing that way. So I would be working all day and I didn't feel like I was being a good mom or being good at, my work because I was distracted a little bit from either one. So I wasn't like fully listening to my kids. I wasn't interacting with them as much. So mom was distracted, but then also like I couldn't like write very well. I couldn't write a good article or answer customers effectively or, do high level strategy thinking or anything like that. I could, answer some emails, check off a few things, but it wasn't very productive. So for me, the first step was just separation of work and like home life. Separation of
Yeah.
work and family, right? I needed to have a few dedicated hours each day that I could work, and I got more done in those few dedicated hours than I ever did in a whole day of trying to do both at the same time.
Yes, I often say that multitasking is not our superpower, it's our kryptonite because it just weakens our focus. And then, like you said, we're not fully present to anything. And it takes twice as long and we make twice as many mistakes. And
Hmm.
yeah, then we're not
Yeah, for
really
sure. And there are
seeing the
some
difference.
types of multitasking I love. I love it when you can pair like a physical, some sort of physical work with some sort of
Right.
mental work. So I'll
Right.
listen to a podcast while I do the dishes, or
Yes.
I'll maybe answer emails while I'm walking on the treadmill, those sorts of things where my body's busy doing something and my mind's doing something else, but my mind is not going to do more than one thing at once. Like I got to be
Exactly.
real with myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. I love this. So as we wind things up, what would you say? Like, what would be one piece of encouragement or advice that you would give to someone who's feeling like she is spending a lot of time and she is checking a lot of boxes, not seeing a lot of results, doesn't really have, much in the way of systems or automations set up? What would you say to her, to
Yeah.
help her start scaling back her time and at the same time scale up her revenue?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad that you asked this question because when you first were introducing this episode, I had a thought that I wanted to share, and then we took a different turn and it never got shared. So this is the perfect
Here it
time now.
is. Good.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of the time, if you're feeling overwhelmed, especially if right now you're working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and whether you're hitting your income goal or not, I think about the person who wants to get their house organized. And right now they've got too much stuff. They're overwhelmed by the clutter. Okay. And this is kind of how I see you if you right now have so much work on your plate. Like you have too much. You're overwhelmed by too much. And there's kind of two different approaches that you can take to that overwhelmed, the overwhelm of the clutter. You can either go in with the organizer mindset, and you can come in with, you went to the container store, you bought all the containers, you go in, you start organizing things into different categories, you start putting them away in the closet, and the house can end up feeling a lot cleaner, right? But it will be really difficult to maintain that because, especially if you are prone to clutter, you will probably continue to accumulate things. The stuff will be taken out of the containers, especially if the containers are stacked 3 deep, right? You got to pull a few containers out. You start unpacking the stuff, and it's really hard to maintain the system. It's a lot of work to maintain the system, and you end up still feeling overwhelmed. The other approach is the minimalist approach. Okay. You go in and instead of trying to organize the stuff, you start by getting rid of 80% of the stuff and only keeping the 20% of the stuff that you really need or really
Mhm.
enjoy. And that's my advice to you. If right now you're overwhelmed with too much in your business, don't try to automate. Don't try to organize. Don't try to systematize or to hire and delegate. Start by figuring out what is the 20% of your work that's getting you 80% of the results and simplify your work as much as you possibly can. Strip away all the things that aren't working. One of the things that grew my business more than anything else was when I decided to reject all of social media, except for the one thing that I was the most interested in, that I thought had the most potential, that I was the most excited about. And that was YouTube in my case. And I'm not saying it needs to be YouTube for you by any means. And I decided to only do that one thing, to double, like triple down on YouTube, but forget about Instagram, forget about LinkedIn, forget about Pinterest, all of that. And YouTube didn't become my life. It just became my number one priority when it came to marketing my business. So every Monday I filmed a video and then I would edit it on Tuesday and publish it on Wednesday. And that happened, I could be completely consistent with that. And I could make those videos be bigger and better than I could before. And in just 3 months, I had 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. It went on to grow to 100,000 over the next 15 months, and today it's over 700,000. That was like the catalyst that made my business take off. And it was because I rejected everything except for that one thing. So for
Mm.
anything you're trying to do in your business, whether that is like get visibility or close customers or work with customers, or work with your team, like any objective you have in your business, try to figure out like that, what that one main thing is, that one like prime mover, I call it sometimes, the thing that more than anything else moves the needle. And think about what if you could triple down on that, and how that could possibly replace all the other things that you're doing right now.
Yeah,
How
I
much
love
more
it.
successful would that one thing need to be to make it so that you don't even need any of those other things? And what are the chances? And I think the chances are pretty good that if you did triple down on that thing, that you would be able to get that result that you're really looking for. In fact, a lot of the time, when we reject most other things and we focus on one thing, we don't just get, maybe now we have like twice as much time to work on it, but we don't just get twice the results. We often get like 10 times the results or even more because we are able to, like, a lot of the time it just takes a little bit more effort with something, a little bit more intentionality with it, a little bit more strategy with it, and we can just go miles further with it. So
Yeah,
that's what I would recommend that you do. Like really simplify, figure out what you need to focus on.
yeah, I love that. And I teach something called the one thing focus because you're right. I
Mm.
think in business, we have, I mean, there are shiny objects everywhere we turn,
Hmm.
right? And so for so many of us, there's an old Russian proverb I always share that says, if you chase two squirrels, you won't catch either one. The problem is in
Yep.
business, we're not chasing two squirrels, we're chasing 22 squirrels or 202 squirrels, and then we're wondering why we're exhausted and not getting anywhere. So yes, I love this. Like figure out what that one thing is, really give it focused time and attention and it will move the needle because it's getting enough of you over a period of time. So this has been fantastic. Thank you so much, Gillian, for sharing your story and just your expertise in all of this area. I know there's a lot more that you share and all of that. So what would be a good next step for somebody who wants to be in your world and who maybe wants to learn a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure. Well, you can find all the things I do at gillianperkins.com. So that's a great place to go. If you want to learn more about YouTube strategy specifically, because that is something that I help people with, then you can go to creatorfasttrack.com. And if you want to listen to my podcast, that's called Work Less, Earn More, and you can find it wherever you like to listen to podcasts.
I love it. Well, we'll make sure to link to those things in the show notes. So make sure you guys go there. I will also link to the Redeem Her Time community because my audience knows we don't let it just stop here on the podcast. Like we've heard a lot of great ideas. We're being challenged to not just organize and systemize, but actually start streamlining and purging and things like that. And so we're going to continue this conversation inside the Redeem Her Time community. So if you are a listener and you're not a member yet, click on the link in the show notes or go to redeemhertime.com/community. Come and join us. We're a bunch of faith-centered Christian women in business who want to be faithful and fruitful with our time and make a bigger impact in through the business that God has called us to, and then go be able to have the time to go live the lives that we have as well. So inviting everyone there as well, and make sure you share this episode with a business bestie or two. I have a feeling she may need to hear exactly what Gillian and I have talked about today. So share this with her and what it was that stood out to you, and that's how we grow, right? So I love this. I always love Gillian to just kind of end with a personal question. We're recording this. It's right near the end of the year when this is coming out. And so we're about to step into a new year. Like when you think about the year ahead, 2026, it's not that far off right now. What is it time for in your life or business? What do you really sense God like calling you to focus on or give some attention to?
Something that I've been thinking about lately has been trying to find a routine for our family. I feel like right now, there's all these different activities that all of us have, and I'm like, how can we balance this between all of us so that we can all be supporting each other and making each other, like making it easier for each other to do the work that we need to do rather than creating resistance or friction for each of us to do the work that we need to do. So, like, how can we help each other with a structured schedule?
Yeah, kind of like creating some systems in your home, just like you have in your
Hmm.
business, can really
Yeah.
help. Yeah, just free up some time and space to just be together. So I love that. I know that we'll have a good roadie return on time invested. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you guys here next time.